our world, we suddenly, came up with this idea of getting a world president Barry for this session. In fact, a couple of weeks back, it took me less than 5 minutes to convince Barry to be with us to discuss this important topic, shaping Rotary's future, which Barry and his wonderful team have been spearheading throughout the world, across the world. So friends, the whole idea is that with Rotary's core values remaining the same, we wish to create a structure that will enable us to do even more than what we've done so far in a much better manner. So like his team is working on an action plan that nurtures leadership qualities among the aspiring Rotarians. With each zone having an average membership of 35,000, there is a need to organize them on the basis of culture, demographics, other unique features without compromising on Rotary values. So with the virtual platforms sweeping the world, Rotary needs to adapt to the new emerging opportunities for growth by creating a new flexible model of governance. So our president Barry does not need any formal introduction. In fact, we all know what a dynamic tenure he had, during 1819 as president. So without taking much of your time, I would like to invite our RI president Barry Rassin for guiding us further on shaping Rotary's future. Yes, Barry.
Thank you so much, Prayesh. I appreciate that introduction, and I appreciate you and Rajiv organizing this today. I think this is a fantastic opportunity for all of us to get together and talk about what's happening today. And I am going to go through shaping Rotary's future. First, I have to mention, though, Rajiv, there's something very coincidental here. My lucky number is 13. So I don't know. That's got to be good for you. And I want to say thank you to all of you for all that you did in 1819. I think the Rotary world really benefited from the year and what you accomplished. And I thank you. More importantly, I thank you for staying involved in Rotary, staying involved in helping our communities to do better today than we've even done in the past. So that's fantastic. And to come together and to listen to me today, I'm very humbled by that. And today I'm going to talk about shaping Rotary's future, as Prayesh said. And before I go into the detail, I want to remind you that this isn't something that Rotary is saying we're going to do. This isn't something that's been agreed to. This isn't, in our world, we say this isn't written in stone as yet. This is a series of ideas of how we could restructure the Rotary world. And you'll hear the purpose of why we want to do that. But when you think about how many clubs we have that don't feel connected to Rotary International, that we need to fix that disconnect. And that's really a big part of what this is all about. We want to make sure that every one of our 36,000 Rotary clubs are connected and understand Rotary and are doing the work of Rotary, not just of their club and their friends. And so that's part of why this structure is here. We also want to be sure that Rotaract is an integrated part of this structure, not just a program as it used to be. Those are two really important points. So I'm going to share my screen now, and I'm going to walk through these slides, and then I'm happy to open up to, I know your questions are going to be difficult, okay? And you're going to bear with me because I don't have answers to every question, but I'll certainly tell you exactly where we stand on those items you're interested in. So let's get started here. Now, we all know that Rotary has been the premier service organization for more than 100 years. The only way, though, that we can continue to be relevant and impactful is by evolving. And we want to evolve to meet the needs of today's members and future generations of Rotarians and Rotaractors. So we must continue to adapt while still providing a fulfilling membership experience. For the past several years, we've had a committee of members dedicated to looking forward to Rotary's future. And the moment I finished being president, I was asked to be chair of this committee. So I've been involved in this from as soon as I finished. So as you could hear, this has been 3 years of engagement. And the question is, how can we engage our current members while creating a membership experience that attracts new voices? Do our leadership roles provide enough value to our members? And these are the things that we wanted to answer with this new structure. But as we talk about change, it's important to understand there's some things we definitely do not want to change. We don't want to change who we are, and we don't want to change what we finalize with our outcomes, the service that we do. The world is not the same as it was when Rotary was founded in 1905. Demographics have shifted, the pace of change has accelerated, and technology has created new opportunities for connection and service. What hasn't changed, though, is a need for the values that define Rotary. Our fellowship helps us to be the strong organization we are. Our integrity brings donors to us because they trust us. We cannot lose that trust. Our diversity is important, and we're talking more about that today than we have in the past, and that's because we really need to improve our diversity. Some parts of the world is doing well, other parts we aren't as diverse as we should be. We're known for the service we do to change communities, and we're known as leaders in all of our communities. Let's not jeopardize any of that. Let's not change the integrity and the core values of who we are. Now, I want to ask you to start. If you were to create Rotary today, how would it be structured? Looking at today's world, would you use the same governance model and the same leadership roles that we currently have, or would you develop something completely new? Chances are you would do things differently. At least that's what many of our members want us to do. They want to be a part of an organization that is innovative and nimble, that offers clear path to leadership and adapts to the evolving needs of members and the communities. So in July of 2018, the board of directors tasked the Shaping Rotary's Future Committee with pushing forward by creating an organizational structure that attracts new participants, new members, enhances our current membership experience for every member, and creates leadership roles that are doable and appealing, as well as improving our ability to adapt. So the proposed model provides a more inclusive and equitable membership experience. Diversity, equity, and inclusion are important to current Rotarians and Rotaractors and those we hope will join Rotary. So we focused on these 6 items. We focused on making meaningful and doable jobs. Doable meaning that any one of us have the time and the opportunity to do the jobs. We also focused on the efficient and effective delivering of value to our members and to our clubs. And we want to make sure we support Rotary's strategic initiatives and strategic goals, so truly every club is a part of the integration of Rotary International. We want to focus a lot on the member experience. And you'll see some numbers in a moment that they blew my mind when I saw these numbers, and it shows our weakness. We've got a lot of strengths, but we also have this major weakness. We also want to streamline the organization so we create effective governance. And you'll see today's organization compared to what we're planning and what we would recommend, and you'll see a big difference in the governance structure. And of course, we want to ensure that the structure is flexible. We need to be able to move and adapt. We need to make decisions and evolve with today's world as our members' needs change. So when we make a case for change, you know, some of you, I'm sure, are standing here saying, why does Rotary need to change? I mean, many of you are in India, and I'm told in India that you need no change. Everything is perfect. You're growing membership. You're doing wonderful things. So why are we talking about this? I understand that. Every country is going to be a little different. Every culture is going to be a little different. But I ask you to keep an open mind and hear what we have to say. We know that the age of our members continue to grow. And we still struggle with the perception that Rotary is only for certain people in some cultures in the world. And of course, we have not met gender parity in membership and leadership in many countries around the world. Some are doing extremely well. Others simply are very slow at bringing women into Rotary. So in order to thrive as an organization, we must consider the needs of future generations. If we don't change as quickly as the world does, the Rotary we know today won't be around tomorrow. So first, let's take a look at our current governance model. And there's lots of different ways to put this model together because there's many moving parts and many different opinions of how this works, which tells you the challenge of our current structure. But as you can see, it's hampered by layers of hierarchy and doesn't provide a clear path to leadership, which hinders decision-making and limits communication. What you don't see is that at the district level, there are 29 mandated positions, plus an additional 13 recommended ones. And at the regional level, there are 200 regional leadership roles with an additional 547 assistant leader positions. Many of these positions are filled by appointment, which means that some skilled, capable, and knowledgeable Rotarians don't have visibility or access to these leadership opportunities. And finally, Rotaract isn't even included in this model. We put Rotaract on the bottom so at least you could see it. But the reality is in the current model, it still is not integrated truly into our organization. They operate separately, even though we are all one organization. We all know now that Rotaract clubs are members of Rotary International, just like a Rotary club. So let's treat them as equals. Let's do what we have to do to take the final steps of changing our culture so that Rotaract is treated as they should be, as young leaders of our organization. So let's look at a few other challenges. One of the biggest issues for Rotary is member engagement and member retention. Global membership has decreased steadily over the last 5 years. And even for the last 20 years, we've always used the number 1.2 million Rotary members. But in the last 10 years, more than 1.3, almost 1.4 million of our members left our organization. That tells you we're really good at bringing them in, but we're really bad at keeping them. And when you ask them, why are we not keeping them? The primary answer is, well, the club didn't meet my expectations. I was told Rotary was one thing, but the club wasn't doing that. The club didn't include me in what the club was doing. They brought me in and then ignored me. So basically, we're not engaging our members. We're not accepting them and helping them to be integrated into our clubs. This has to change. We have to give strict attention to be sure that our members, every single one of them, are involved in what we do so they feel a part of our organization. Just imagine for a moment if we just kept half of these members, we'd be a completely different organization to do today, doing 10 times more than we have done in the past. We need to take this very seriously. And if you look at the graphs showing when people leave, it's within the first 2 or 3 years. They join, they don't feel that we've met their expectations, so they leave. If they have 3, 4, 5 years, they tend to stay with us because now they're involved, now they're part, and they feel a part of the organization. When we look at our gender parity, women have been a part of Rotary for more than 30 years, and yet still only make up 24% of our global membership. In some parts of the world, that percentage is higher, but many other countries are well below the average. We are seeing tremendous growth from 10 years ago. But even if this trend continues, we won't achieve gender parity until the year 2050. There's a lot of really good females out there, leaders in our communities who we are ignoring. They could be a great benefit to our organization. And it's not just about women, it's about all diversity. It's about all those who aren't exactly like the members of the club, but are in the community. Our bylaws have said for many, many years that we should represent our community in our clubs. And yet ask yourselves, look at Rotaract. they have already achieved gender parity with 51% of its global membership being women. We have a lot to learn from Rotary, and we need to take that very seriously. Even when you look at the leadership positions at the district level and in the various regions and zones, you'll see that even in leadership, only 24% of the positions are held by women. And most of that, or the higher percentage of that, is with public image. The interesting part, that's the only position that you don't have to be a past district governor. Ask yourself how that fits in to why we don't have more women. Okay. Also, another key point on this chart, last year, 6% of the district governors were under the age of 60. Only 6%. Now, I'm in that category of over 60. I appreciate that we have a lot to offer. I don't discount those of us who are over 60. But we are not balanced as an organization. We need to create a structure that allows more young members of our organization, Rotary and Rotaract, to take part in our leadership positions. If we do that, then we have a better look, a better image than other individuals look at us and say, hey, that's a good organization. I want to join that. That isn't just an organization of older people. So, with all that being said, what is the proposed model? Well, you remember what you saw with the current model. Instead of this, we are proposing something new. Members will continue to belong to a Rotary or Rotaract club. That's important. Clubs don't change. This doesn't affect a club, except that it gives more attention to the club. Clubs remain unchanged, though they will be grouped into sections. Each section will have only 10 to 30 Rotary and Rotaract clubs, and note that we are integrating them. So they will be part of the organization, part of the section, and considered a part of that section. And the section leaders will only be providing guidance and motivation to the club. Their job is to spend time with each one of their clubs to do everything they can to help the club recognize their strengths and their weaknesses, and then to help bring resources to the club to help them grow and develop. Districts will be restructured into regions that are governed locally by a regional council. And finally, there's the board of directors and trustees, along with a newly created global cadre of experts to help members, clubs, and regional councils. We're not touching the board of directors or the foundation. That doesn't change. We'll talk about the global cadre because that does change. But each member, Rotarians and Rotaractors within a region, can apply to and elect their regional council representatives and section leaders. So that's the essence of the new structure. So let's take a closer look at each one of those layers to give a little more meaning to each one. The RI board, the trustees, as I say, will not change. However, in addition, there will be a global cadre. Now, the leaders in the cadre will provide expertise on specific topics that represent core functions of a club. Their expertise may originate from their Rotary experience or from their professional lives, both of which will be actively solicited and valued. These experts are resources who can help the clubs achieve their goals. Now, the cadre won't be expected to reach out and talk to clubs. Instead, it's up to the section leaders and the clubs to determine who to bring in to help them to achieve and to make their weaknesses strengths. Members of the cadre will be trained and certified as experts in each of the fields, and they'll be internationally based, so they'll be closer to the clubs and easier to access when the clubs are in need. And of course, they are available to every club and every regional council. At the regional level, We know what works in one part of the world does not necessarily work in another. We've talked about regionalization for years, and everywhere we talk, people say, yes, we do need to regionalize. We do need to accept that regions of the world can make some of their own decisions. They don't need Rotary International to tell them what to do. So those clubs who share similar culture, language, and geography would be grouped into a region and governed by a regional council that will make decisions about club, member, and community needs in a more localized way. So the regional council manages the day-to-day activities, like assessing regional dues and creating committees and supporting section leaders. And there'll be about 45 of these regions globally. Now, some will say, well, we already have 34 zones. Why do we need to do regions instead? But remember, zones are divided, like Prayesh said, by the number 35,000 members are in every zone. That means we have to put together parts of the world that don't really fit together. We're making a jigsaw with the zones where the pieces don't fit, and we're forcing them to, and that creates broken pieces. That has to change. We have countries of the world that don't talk to each other, and yet they're in the same zone. Now, as Rotary, we all talk to each other, don't get me wrong, and we need to work together, and we can help bring peace by doing that. However, let's be reasonable and practical, and let's talk more about how we do this so that it's culturally appropriate. Each regional council will have 12 elected positions, and they'll be chosen by the Rotarians and Rotaractors within the region to serve a 3-year term. The regional council reports to the board of directors as a whole, not to an individual director, as we see with our current structure. This should free up the board to be more strategic with its time and focus its duties as international directors and not as regional leaders. So at the sections, rather than districts, Rotary and Rotaract clubs will be organized into sections and supported, not governed by a section leader. And I emphasize that because we want to take all the administrative burden off of the section leader and put that at the regional council. So based on the current amount of clubs in the world, there'll be about 1,800 sections with 10 to 30 Rotary and Rotaract clubs in each section. And the number of sections per region will vary. It won't be the same. It won't be that every zone has to be the same. It'll be that every region has to be appropriate for the culture and the geography, and will depend on the volunteer population, language, and culture. Section leaders will lead, motivate, and inspire. You know, I like that word, and I know all of you like that word. We will inspire a small set of clubs within a geographic area. With fewer clubs to support, section leaders can concentrate their efforts on helping the clubs to reach their goals. They will serve for 4 years, 2 years as the elect and 2 years as the section leader. This expanding leadership terms provide more consistent support and continuity for the clubs. While changing our leaders every year on July 1st brings a lot of new blood, new energy, and change, it doesn't develop the continuity that our clubs really need from us. And like the regional council, Rotarians and Rotaractors can apply to and elect their section leader. The section leader position is not replacing the district governor role. Instead, we're taking the best parts of the district governor position and dividing it so the administrative responsibilities transition to the regional council, while section leaders will take on the role of motivating and guiding clubs. This division of responsibilities allows members to choose a leadership role that better aligns with their professional goals and their interests. Well, that's about it. By introducing a more streamlined governance structure, we can remove some layers of hierarchy, increase efficiency, and attract new voices into Rotary leadership. This change will benefit our organization and our members today, while also laying the foundation for a strong future. As a people of action, all of us believe in Rotary's future, but we also know that there's a big gap between who we are as an organization today and who we need and want to be. So that's the essence of our model. You can see it's many changes, and I know the first time you see that, it's hard to grasp all the changes that we're doing and creates more questions than answers. And that's why we want to do this as much as possible, talk to as many groups as possible to get input back from you as to your thoughts and how it would work. We do want to provide pilots in a number of areas of the world. We already are working very well with Australia, New Zealand, and the Pacific Islands, who wish to be one region. And they have their committee working, which represents all of the districts in the region. And they are well ahead. I'm meeting the staff of Australia tonight, and I'll start meeting with the governors next week, and then the governors elect, and then the governor's nominee, and then each one of the districts. So think about, I know one of your questions is, what's the timing? Well, think about when we want to meet with every one of those groups one by one, that takes time. And we have to listen. We have to talk about, should this be modified a little to meet the needs of our regions around the world? So this is going to take time, and it could go through 9 years. I talk about 3 councils on legislation. We really don't believe we need to go to the next one, but we might. We don't know yet. And part of that is because what we're doing doesn't really make any major change. It's just a pilot. It's a trial. It's putting the ideas into one part of the world and seeing how it works, and then measuring the outcomes of that. Our small committee of 8 of us, 7 of us, has 12 subcommittees looking at every aspect of this. You can imagine the committee has been working really hard. I admire the John Smarge and Ian Risley, Larry Lunsford, and Bharat has been involved with this. And I know you all know Bharat. So it's, and Dean Roars is the vice chair. These are people who have a great dedication to Rotary. We're also talking to Great Britain and Ireland, and they already have a model that's a little different from the rest of the world, and they're already starting to make changes in this direction. And what we do find is, and we'll have questions in a moment, but what we do find is the idea of regionalization, where the region can make local decisions. As an example, election disputes could go to the regional council. They don't need to go to a board of Rotary International. That's one example. Let the regions deal with local issues. Let the international board deal with the global issues of Rotary. There's also a lot of agreement that let's give more attention to our clubs. Our clubs need a greater connection to Rotary International and what we do. So that's a big part of what we want to accomplish. So I'll leave it there. We have been asked by a number of parts of the world to be a pilot. Africa wants to get together with a number of countries. Europe wants to get together with a number of countries. Brazil wants to get together with a number of their districts so that they can be a region and be in our pilot. So there's a lot of interest to be in the pilot. And my recommendation to all of them is, well, get together with many districts and put together a committee and start talking about how you would do that. And then if you can get that kind of agreement, then I'll be happy to talk to that and see if we can get you in a pilot. Now, we know that Australia, New Zealand, Pacific Islands is losing membership. We know that RIBI, Great Britain and Ireland, is losing membership. So we want to also do a pilot in a place like India that is growing in membership and see if it works in all different types of cultures around the world. That's important when you test a model. I have been told by some leaders that we shouldn't go to India because India is already doing everything right. They don't need any change. I make no judgment on that. I don't know anybody who does it all right. But the point is, we need to keep our mind open and think about what should we do different to make our organization better, to make our organization stronger. And with that, I'll shut up and be happy to entertain any of your questions. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Barry. Wonderful presentation. We have very few questions, but hopefully they will pour in once we start. They had Suzanne and Nick has asked about and Frank about the schedule, but I think schedule you have already told what it will be. A 9 years schedule and 3 COL it will take. Can you elaborate on that schedule? How it will be, what will be the timetable?
Yeah, the idea is that we believe that it'll take at least the next year just to organize the pilots and get them ready. So if we're really good at that, then July 1st of next year, we could start the pilots. A pilot needs to run for at least 3 years before we can make judgment about how successful or unsuccessful it was and measure the outcomes. So at the end of that 3 years, then we have to regroup and talk about how this has worked or not worked, and talk about how we should change it, and then perhaps do another pilot with any changes they come up with. So that would be another 3 years. And that you can see why this is going to take a long time. This is not a short-term solution. The benefit of this is that more and more Rotarians and Rotaractors over those years are going to get to know what we're doing and get to give us their opinion, good or bad, on what we're doing, so that we can learn from those of you who are on the ground working with clubs to know that this is a better way to do it.
Okay, Janet from Florida is asking, can you clarify how many clubs will make up a section? I understand 10 to 12 clubs. However, the section leader slide shows it will be 25 to 30 clubs. Second question is similar to that is, will section includes club representing more than one district?
A section will be somewhere between 10 and 30 clubs. Okay, and that's going to depend. For instance, in my district has 10 countries. So we might have a section leader by country or by 1 or 2 countries that are really close to each other. So the number of clubs will vary depending on the reality of how that works. So I might have a section leader with 9, and I might have a section leader with 25. We have to make it appropriate for that part of the world. That's what's really important. Sorry, what was the?
Sorry, please.
Yeah,
Please,
Rajiv,
is it done? I should. Okay, Priyesh.
yeah, there is a question from Bill from 5110. Bill says, if the zones exist currently, to elect the RI directors, how will this change, Barry?
At this point, we have no change to that. The zones do exist, and they could continue to exist based on the number of members and based on the fact that they do elect certain positions, such as international directors. At this point, we have not factored that in for any change. So districts aren't going to just go away. Many people are concerned, well, what happens? The district is gone. No, that's not going to happen. What we have to do is integrate the district into this new concept. And then as the pilots are working, determine how best those districts can integrate. It will take many districts. I mean, you can imagine, I think there's 19 districts in Australia. So all of those are going to work together, but they still exist as districts.
Okay. So similar question was about directors was that if your chart shows that cadre members will be rising up to director or trustee, will that be the minimum qualification to become director and trustee, or it remains the same?
No, it would remain the same. The cadre is simply there because it's not reporting to the regions. It's reporting to our umbrella organization, Rotary International. So it has to be at that level as a resource, not as directly in the structure.
Michael from District 2452 says, what about the district conferences? If no district governor, who will be the part of International Assembly training programs? So he's worried about.
Districts won't disappear, so the district could still do something. But thinking about the future, what we would now have is a regional conference. So we would bring more groups together with the entire region being able to come to a conference. We're already talking about that in some parts of the world. In the United States, they're talking about having a conference for the whole eastern part of the United States, which is many, many, many districts. And what happens is you get better speakers, you get better attendance, and you get to meet new people that you didn't know before. So there's a lot of advantages of going.
Hello.
Yeah, good. So, there's another statement from Ismail who says, I understand that the positive sides of regionalization, but beware of having different levels of Rotary throughout the world. Rotary is one and global and should remain so.
It is one, and there's many aspects as our core values that we should not change. Who we are should not change. But the reality is our cultures around the world are different. And we deal with certain issues based on our cultures. So why are we forcing every culture to do exactly the same thing? As I said, the core values should be the same, but how we do it could be different based on what's efficient and effective for that culture in the world. We need to give a greater respect to the fact that we do have different cultures.
Right. Many of us are agreeing with your concept and asking how can they help to help this change, and some are asking change is good, but why should not we stick to our traditions? So these are contrary opinions. So
yes, how could you help and why should we change? Helping is talking about the structure, talking with our clubs, asking them, talking with our senior leaders about how you feel about this. Is this something we should do or not do? And what could make it work for you as an individual? So how can you help? Let's keep the discussion going. That's important. Now, why should we change? Now, that's an interesting question that I do get. And we don't want to dishonor our traditions, but there's a reality here that we have to face. And that is that our young professionals around the world are looking at some of our traditions and saying, I don't want to be a part of that. I'm going to go do something else. Less than 4% of our Rotaractors join Rotary clubs. That around the world, that's a global statistic. That has to change. We have to be more welcoming. We have to make sure that our clubs create an atmosphere within our clubs that's more relevant to today's world and to our young professionals. If we don't change, what happens? Maybe nothing. Maybe we'll continue just being what we are and not growing. The reality is we have a responsibility. I look at us as what our core is. Our core is that we have a responsibility to make our world a better place. That's why we all exist. That's why we are in a Rotary club. That's what our Rotary clubs do. So let's create an organization that can do more to make our world better than it could before. That's why we need to talk about change. Is it easy to change? No. Many of us will say, yeah, change is good, but when change affects me as an individual, I don't want to change. Yeah. So change is tough. We need to talk about it. That's part of why it's going to take a long time, is because we are dealing with significant change in the organization. So just take a deep breath and think about how it could help us, not why it can't help us.
Just adding to it, John Bosco says, why should not we keep calling them governors rather than section leaders? That will be a better thing to do.
Yeah, that's a question we get quite often. And we haven't finalized, section leader isn't a great title. We accept that. We've spent a lot of time trying to come up with a good name. And maybe it is we go back to being a district governor. Our challenge, and I'm being very open and honest with you, our challenge with the name district governor is if we don't change the name, then parts of the world won't change the job description. And what's really important is that whatever we call that person that's working directly with the clubs, they need to understand this is a different job than what the district governor used to be. This job is about motivating clubs to understand who they are and what they do. And if you don't change the title, what happens is people don't change the job description. So we feel it's important to change the name. What that name is could be anything, and we accept suggestions. We don't like the name section leader, quite honestly, but let's come up with a good name, and let's appreciate that it's a different job than what the district governor's job is today.
Yeah, a lot of different diverse opinion coming in, Rajiv. One interesting one from past district governor Jain. The idea of regional and section seems like a good idea. However, having the Rotary Rotaract clubs electing the regional leaders seems that, it could almost turn out into a sort of campaign. Could this cause some strife between Rotarians? Not sure I like this concept.
Yeah, we're very concerned about that particular aspect of the model in some parts of the world. In some parts of the world, it won't be an issue. In others, it will. And we have to take that into consideration before we finalize this. The reasoning behind it is we want the clubs to be involved in making the decision of who their leaders are. Because if they're involved in that decision-making process, they have a buy-in that this is my leader and I need to work with this leader. Okay, today, many clubs don't even know who their district governor is and have no part. There's nominating committee of past district governors. They make a decision, they announce it, and basically the clubs have no part in it, and therefore it means nothing to them. We need the clubs to be involved in one fashion or another, so the clubs feel an ownership to who their leaders are. That's the reasoning behind it.
Okay, sorry, Prayesh, go ahead.
Yeah, I think Barbara has something to add there. She says regionalization, in my opinion, limits the internationality and the exchange. Think of Zone 21, what an exchange of ideas. And then she adds on to say, on the other side, you cannot put all the Africans in Zone 2 because they are located on a continent. Africa needs regionalization, but even now, 2 zones.
And again, those are the kind of questions that are common. We do not want to limit internationality. Absolutely not. That's who we are. That's what makes us successful, because we work together as different nations of the world. And when we bring 45 regions together, clearly with that small number, we have to bring together different cultures. But we want to make it, forgive the way I say this, we have to make it more sensible than the way we define zones. We want to make sure it's culturally appropriate. It could be different languages. It could be different geographies. Don't lose the internationality, because that's part of our success. But let's be realistic about how we bring those groupings of Rotarians and Rotaractors together.
Right. Gian from District 2032 says, please, can there is a limit to propose this pilot region? Is the proposal will be asked from the districts, or you are going to suggest who should be the pilot districts?
Well, we're basically entertaining from those parts of the world that want to be a region. And like I said, if a number of districts get together and agree they want to be a pilot, then we would entertain that. We don't want to tell anybody what to do. Australia, New Zealand, Pacific Islands came to us and said, we want to do this. Great Britain and Ireland already has a different model, so they are very interested in doing this. And like I said, we want this to come from the grassroots of Rotary, not from the senior leaders of Rotary.
Abbas from Mexico, he's asking, why are we focused on change in Rotary International rather than make changes so that we make easy global grant applications and raising funds for foundation more easier than we should be focusing on that more?
Well, that's 2 very different things. Absolutely, global grants should be easy to get, but we're always going to have that sustainability item as global grants, which means there needs to be a lot of information there for global grants. That's already being discussed and worked on. So it's really 2 very different things. And there are those working on the global grant issue. We're working on the changing of the structure issue.
Yeah, I think there's a question, Barry, from Gerald Robinson, who says, Barry said that section leaders will provide support, not governance of their clubs. Will the regional council take the same approach?
No, the idea is the regional council then takes on the administrative burden for the whole region. So anything to do with administration would come from the regional council. What we want to do is free up the section leader to really have the time to spend with each club that they have to help those clubs. Many clubs don't even appreciate that they need help, so they do nothing to change. We need somebody who has the time to spend with them to be leaders to help them to develop their thinking as clubs. So no, the regional council and the section leader, very different approach to what we're doing.
Rajiv, from Amsterdam, from District 1580, she says they have divided their 80 clubs into 10 regions. And we changed the regional chairman to an assistant governor. Now, this change has helped them for the role of the assistant governor of the 10 clubs. We have connected with the clubs from the region with the events and are taking action together, also together with Rotary. This change has been good for District 1580.
And that's good. It's all about reaching clubs. It's all about creating a structure that helps clubs. Some districts are doing some things already that is good for clubs and good for Rotary. Right? One district has made a Rotary an assistant governor. And that really brings Rotary into the fold. That's good. Why not? So I greatly respect any district that wishes to make changes that makes our organization better, makes our clubs stronger.
The question is about Rotary Foundation. What will happen to the structure of Rotary Foundation, DRFC role and DDF? How will that will be affected by this changes?
Very good question. And we're still in discussion on the answer to the question, but let me tell you the thinking. The idea would be is that the RRFC would be part of the cadre. So within the cadre, not only would we have one regional foundation coordinator, but we would have expertise in all facets of the foundation. As the earlier question about global grants, we would have somebody locally who knows global grants so well, they could help the clubs with global grants, as well as all other aspects of the foundation. So the cadre would be where that expertise would come from. Now, the DDF is an interesting aspect of what we want to do. The idea that eventually we would transition to a regional designated fund. So the regional council would be responsible for a designated fund, not the district. That would enable the regional board to determine how to do those grants throughout the entire region, and gives the opportunity for the regional board to do higher impact projects in the region. You know, this needs to obviously go through districts and also through the Rotary Foundation to see how this could work in reality. But the idea is that we could do a lot more, because now you have a bigger pooling of dollars. And what we have to do is make sure we protect the district designated funds of today, so that the clubs, because the clubs own those, and the clubs need to be involved in those funds and make decisions regarding that. So that transition has got to be done very carefully, so we don't jeopardize any of the districts and the funds they already have. And by the way, we shouldn't be holding district designated funds for long terms. We should make sure they transition, and Polio Plus needs your help, folks. So anybody
there is a big question from EMGA Suresh Hari. In the focus discussion on proposals, RI had discussed recently will select country-specific members. I was part of that group from India. Fee posers were on the multiplicity of the power and elected relation issue of India, specifically had issue on elections and this big challenge as regards to regional leaders being elected. Also, the role of DG vis-a-vis the zonal leaders are in conflict. This needs to be ironing out. Basically, it's a comment rather than questions. Would you like to comment on that?
As was said, the election disputes in India are a challenge, and we deeply appreciate that, and we discuss that, and how do we avoid that from happening? We don't have answers to that, quite honestly. So those are the kind of issues we have to take up on a regional level.
So sub question I have, when we have 40 districts and there are so many complaints that RI is not able to handle, how so many section leaders elections will be handled when RI have those complaints with them?
RI won't deal with them. The regional council will deal with them.
Any more questions you have with you?
Yeah, I think we can go on and on and on, but I
Okay,
think
I think we should now close, and I will ask Vinay Bhatia to propose a vote of thanks, please. Before that, Barry, would you like to have final few comments for 30 seconds, maybe? Maybe praise Priyesh and me for a good work we have done today.
Sure, happy to. I really appreciate all the questions, because it's the questions that help us think carefully about what we're doing and maybe make changes along the way. We do appreciate everything that's been asked. That's a potential challenge we've already discussed. And we know we have many potential challenges. And that's why we want to do it in a pilot so we can see exactly how it can work. That's why we would like to do a pilot in India, because some of these issues that were brought up today are specific to India. So we'd love to get one region of India into the pilot. But we all need to keep our minds open. The bottom line is our organization needs to be more relevant to today's world. We need to be more relevant to our young professionals. We need to appreciate our diversity better than we do today. So we need change in that direction, and that's what we're trying to do. We need every Rotarian in the world and every Rotaractor in the world to work toward understanding what we should do differently. So I really appreciate your time thinking about all of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Vinay. You can unmute yourself and please.
Thank you, Rajiv. Thank you.
Propose formal vote of thanks. Yeah.
On behalf of all my batchmates of 1819, I propose a vote of thanks to our president, 1819 Barry, for that insightful presentation and a great question hour session, shaping Rotary's future. I'll be failing my duty if I don't thank Rajiv, Priyesh, Jitendra, Ravi Karan, and of course, Praveen, and all those who are involved in bringing all of us on this platform. We look forward for many more sessions and meetings like this. Thank you, each one of you, for participating in this meeting. Thank you.
Okay, my request is please stay for a second and switch on your cameras. I will take a good screenshots of everyone so that we remember this. And then I will unmute. I've already unmuted everyone, so you can start chatting also. So just hold on. Please smile, everyone. One screenshot is done. Now second screen. Third screen, some cameras are off, but still I will take one. Thank you very much. And thank you for participation. And I am unmuting all. All can unmute themselves and have a wonderful fellowship. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Bye,
very much.
Barry.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure as always.
Thank you.
To see you all in Houston next year.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Hi,
See you guys in Houston.
All the best to all.
Hi, Barry.
Hi,
Hi,
Barry.
Thank you. Good to see you all.
We need to make sure that we all get together in Houston to do this in person.
Yes.
We will find a slot so that we can have
a separate
reunion at
session in
Houston.
Houston for
That we will do.
1819 batches.
Thank you,
Yes.
our President Barry. You're
Yes.
so much
Barry,
inspirational.
make sure you have a karaoke in Houston.
Thank you, everyone. Nice to see you all again.